Britney Jean Spears was born on December 2, 1981, in Macomb, Mississippi, and raised in the small town of Kentwood, Louisiana. From the moment she could walk, she was singing and dancing. Performing wasn't just something she enjoyed, it was a part of her. But growing up in a small town with big dreams wasn't easy, especially in a family filled with instability. Her father, Jamie Spears, struggled with alcohol and financial problems. He was emotionally distant, unpredictable, and carried a temper that made home life tense. Her mother, Lynn, tried to hold things together, supporting Britney's dreams while also dealing with her own struggles. Britney found solace in music, often escaping into it when things at home felt too overwhelming. At just 8 years old, Britney auditioned for the Mickey Mouse Club, but she was told she was too young. Rather than giving up, she and her mother moved to New York City, where she trained, took small acting and singing gigs, and refined her talent. She lived a split life. One moment she was a small-town girl playing with her siblings, and the next she was surrounded by industry professionals who saw her as a future star. At 11 she finally earned a spot on the Mickey Mouse Club, performing alongside future celebrities like Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, and Ryan Gosling. For a while it felt like her dreams were coming true. She was doing what she loved, making friends and learning about the entertainment industry. But when the show was canceled, she was forced to return home, feeling like a piece of her identity had been ripped away. Back in Louisiana, Britney tried to live like a normal teenager, going to school, making friends, and even considering a life outside of performing. But deep down, she knew she wasn't meant for an ordinary life. She had spent years training, preparing, and dreaming of something bigger. The stage was calling her back. At 16 she recorded a demo that would change everything, a song called Baby One More Time. When she signed with Jive Records, her life transformed overnight. The moment the music video aired, Britney Spears became a global sensation. Dressed in a schoolgirl outfit, dancing through a high school hallway, she instantly captured the world's attention. The song shot to the top of the charts, and suddenly Britney wasn't just another pop singer, she was the pop singer. Her face was everywhere. Teenagers idolized her, the media couldn't get enough of her, and record labels rushed to push her into the next phase of superstardom. But fame came at a cost. Britney was young, talented, and eager to succeed, but she quickly learned that the entertainment industry didn't see her as a person, it saw her as a product. Every detail of her life was managed. What she wore, how she spoke, and even how she smiled in interviews were carefully curated. The world saw her as the perfect combination of innocence and rebellion, and her team worked hard to maintain that image. As her career skyrocketed, she entered a high-profile relationship with Justin Timberlake. To the public, they were the golden couple of pop music, young, talented, and deeply in love. But behind the scenes, their relationship was far from perfect. Britney loved Justin, but their lives were moving too fast and cracks began to form. When they broke up, it wasn't just a personal heartbreak, it became a public scandal. Justin released Cry Me a River, a song that strongly suggested Britney had cheated on him. The music video featured a Britney lookalike, further fueling the rumors. The media turned against her, painting her as the villain. Overnight, she went from America's sweetheart to the girl who had broken Justin Timberlake's heart. The scrutiny was relentless. Paparazzi followed her everywhere. Every move she made was dissected, criticized, and turned into tabloid headlines. The same industry that had built her up was now tearing her down. Despite the heartbreak, Britney kept working. She released hit after hit, Oops, I Did It Again, Stronger, I'm a Slave for You, each song solidifying her status as one of the most influential pop artists of her time. But the pressure to maintain perfection was crushing. As she pushed forward, trying to keep up with the demands of fame, she started feeling the weight of an industry that expected her to be everything at once. Sexy but innocent, strong but vulnerable, famous but private. The expectations were impossible, but she had no choice but to keep going. Then came the night that would change everything. The night she shaved her head. For Britney, it wasn't a meltdown. It was a statement. She was tired of being controlled, tired of people telling her what to do, tired of being treated like a product instead of a human being. Shaving her head was her way of taking back control. But instead of seeing it as an act of defiance, the media painted it as proof that she was spiraling. The paparazzi swarmed her, capturing every moment. The images of her attacking a photographer's car with an umbrella were plastered everywhere, fueling the narrative that she was out of control. But no one stopped to ask why she was acting this way. No one considered what years of pressure, scrutiny, and invasion of privacy had done to her mental state. Things only got worse when she lost custody of her children. The courts deemed her unfit, and the media capitalized on her pain, turning it into entertainment. She was portrayed as a reckless mother, a woman who had lost her way, someone who needed to be saved from herself. Then in 2008 her father, Jamie Spears, stepped in, not to help, but to take complete control of her life. Under a conservatorship, Britney was stripped of her rights. She couldn't make financial decisions, couldn't manage her personal life, couldn't even leave the house without permission. The world saw her still performing, still smiling on stage, but behind the scenes she had lost everything. For over a decade she lived under her father's control. She continued making music, touring and generating millions of dollars, but she had no access to her own money. She was monitored, medicated and silenced. Even when she wanted to stop working, she wasn't allowed. Britney wasn't just trapped, she was imprisoned in plain sight. Yet through it all she never stopped fighting. She found small ways to resist, to assert her identity in any way she could. She left hidden messages in interviews, used her music to hint at her struggles, and waited for the moment when she could finally be heard. Then, in 2021 that moment came. Standing before a judge, Britney Spears spoke her truth. She described the abuse, the control, the years of silence. She revealed that she had been forced to work against her will, that she had been denied the ability to remove an IUD and have more children, that she had been isolated from her own life. The world listened. The Free Britney movement exploded, turning into an unstoppable force. Fans, celebrities and legal experts all rallied behind her, demanding justice. And finally, after years of fighting, Britney Spears was free. But freedom wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. Britney Spears had won her freedom, but stepping into the world again wasn't as simple as people thought. After 13 years of being controlled, of being told where to go, what to do, what to say, and even what to think, she now had to figure out who she was without anyone pulling the strings. But where do you even begin when you've spent over a decade being told you're incapable of making decisions? 4 years, Britney had been treated like a child, despite being a grown woman, a mother, and a global superstar. The conservatorship had forced her to work endlessly, yet she had no control over her own money. If she wanted to buy something as simple as a candle, she had to ask for permission. And now, after all that time, she was expected to just move on. But healing wasn't instant. She struggled with overwhelming emotions: relief, anger, exhaustion, and grief. The world celebrated her freedom, but they didn't see the quiet moments when she was alone, trying to process everything that had happened to her. Trust was one of the hardest things to rebuild. People she once loved had stood by while she suffered. Her mother, who had once been her biggest supporter, had let it happen. Her sister, Jamie Lynn, had not only distanced herself but had even written a book, speaking about Britney's struggles as if they were just another Hollywood story. And her father, the man who had sworn he was protecting her, had stolen years of her life. Britney had to ask herself, could she forgive them? She wanted to move forward, but the betrayal ran too deep. Her father had controlled her finances, her body, and her career, all while living off her success. Her mother had stayed silent. And Jamie Lynn had taken opportunities that Britney's success had given her, only to later act as if she had no part in it. There was no simple answer. Letting go of the past didn't mean she had to let those who hurt her back into her life. But the pain of what had been taken from her, her freedom, her youth, her ability to make choices for herself, was something she carried with her every day. Despite the weight of everything, Britney wanted to reclaim her life in ways both big and small. She drove her car whenever she wanted, something that had been forbidden under the conservatorship. She traveled on her own terms, no longer needing permission to leave the house. She danced in her living room, not as a performer forced to entertain, but simply because she loved to move. But even in freedom there were moments of uncertainty. For so long she had been Britney Spears, the pop star, the performer, the product. Now she had to figure out who Britney Spears, the person, really was. Music had always been a part of her soul, but the industry had used it to control her. Every album, every tour, every performance had been decided for her. Now that she had the power to choose, she wasn't sure if she wanted to return. Did she love music enough to step back into an industry that had taken so much from her? The world wanted a comeback. People expected her to announce new music, a tour, something that would prove she was really back. But Britney wasn't interested in proving anything to anyone. For now she focused on healing. She had spent her entire life being watched, judged, and scrutinized. The media had turned her pain into entertainment, following her with cameras, waiting for her to break. Even now, with the conservatorship over, there were still people who expected her to fail. But Britney was done playing by anyone else's rules. She had survived everything the world had thrown at her. The toxic relationships, the legal battles, the media's obsession with her downfall, she had endured it all. And now, for the first time, she was truly in control. Her relationship with Sam Asghari, the man who had stood by her through the fight for freedom, had seemed like a bright spot in her life. They had fallen in love during one of the hardest chapters of her story, and for a while, it felt like they could build a future together. But love alone wasn't enough. After years of being told what to do, Britney needed time to discover who she was on her own. She had rushed into relationships before, looking for love to heal the wounds left by fame, heartbreak, and betrayal. But now she realized that no one else could fix what had been broken. She had to do that for herself. In 2023, she and Sam separated. It wasn't the fairy tale ending people had hoped for, but Britney wasn't interested in fairy tales anymore. She wanted something real. And right now, that meant focusing on herself. Writing this memoir was a part of that healing. For years, the media had twisted her story, turning her into a character instead of a person. They had decided who she was, what she had done, and what she deserved. This book was her way of taking back her narrative. She wanted people to know the truth, not just about the conservatorship but about everything. The pressures of fame, the way the industry used young women like her, the impossible expectations that had been placed on her from the moment she became famous. She wanted people to understand that what happened to her wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a reflection of a system that had failed her. A system that had taken a young girl with dreams and turned her into a product. But she refused to let that be the end of her story. She had fought too hard, survived too much, and lost too many years to allow anyone else to define her future. For the first time in her life, Britney Spears was no longer answering to anyone. No managers, no lawyers, no contracts, no industry expectations. She was finally free. And this time the story was hers to tell. Britney Spears had spent years fighting to be free, but freedom was not the fairy tale ending people imagined. It was not as simple as walking away from the past and starting fresh. The scars from everything she had been through, the betrayals, the control, the loss of her autonomy, did not disappear overnight. She had won her legal battle, but now she had to face the deeper work of healing. For 13 years, her life had been dictated by others. She had been told where she could go, what she could wear, even how she could spend her own money. Now, with no one controlling her, she had to unlearn the idea that she needed permission to exist. She could finally make her own choices, but the weight of years spent being denied that right made every decision feel overwhelming. Some days she felt lighter than she had in years, dancing, traveling, enjoying simple pleasures that had been stolen from her for so long. Other days she felt lost, unsure of what came next. The world wanted a comeback. They wanted the Britney Spears they had known, the pop princess, the performer, the star who could light up a stage. But Britney wasn't sure if she wanted to step back into that world. Music had been her escape, her passion, her greatest love. But it had also been the thing that kept her trapped. Under the conservatorship, her music had been used as a tool of control. She had been forced to work, to perform in Las Vegas night after night, all while having no control over her own life. Could she return to music without feeling like she was back in a cage? For now, she wasn't in a rush to decide. For the first time, Britney was living for herself. She didn't owe the industry anything. She didn't owe the public a new album, a tour, or a carefully crafted statement. She was allowed to simply exist, to take time to breathe, to figure out what made her happy outside of the expectations that had followed her since she was a teenager. One thing she did know, she would never let anyone take away her freedom again. She had been through too much, fought too hard, and lost too many years to ever let herself be controlled again. She had survived an industry that had used her up and discarded her when she no longer fit their perfect image. She had endured the cruelty of the media, the judgment of the public, and the betrayal of the people who should have protected her. But she had come out the other side. Not unscathed, not without wounds, but stronger. She no longer needed to be the girl everyone wanted her to be. She didn't have to be perfect, or polished, or packaged into the version of Britney Spears the world had created. She could just be Britney. A woman who had spent years being silenced, finally speaking her truth. A survivor who had been controlled for over a decade, finally reclaiming her life. A person who had spent her entire existence performing for others, finally deciding to live for herself. She didn't know exactly what the future held. But for the first time, that future belonged to her. And that was enough. Her story had been written by others for too long. Now it was hers to tell. And no one, no judge, no father, no lawyer, no industry executive, could ever take that away from her again. Britney Spears was finally free. And this time the world would hear her in her own words.